ready to, it's never too late to hit reset and start over in life and love. I'm Suzanne Oshima, and I'm a life and love transformational coach at Your Next Amazing Story. I'm beyond thrilled to have an amazing guest, Lisa Shield, because she's one of my favorite people. She makes me laugh all the time. But today we're talking about how I found the guardian of my soul. But before we jump into it, I would love to share a little bit about Lisa. Lisa Shield is the premier dating coach in Los Angeles with 17 years of experience. Lisa has a master's degree in spiritual psychology and is a certified life and relationship coach. She has been a featured expert in the Huffington Post, BuzzFeed, LA Times, and Cosmopolitan. She was also a guest on ABC News and The Millionaire Matchmaker. Last year, 11 of Lisa's LA clients were married, and she was asked to officiate 4 of those weddings. She and her husband, Benjamin, are passionately in love after 16 years. They live in LA with their 2 dogs, Milo and Owen. So welcome, Lisa. I'm super excited to have you here today.
I am too, Suzanne. Thanks. And actually, I found out it was 12 weddings last year. So
Woohoo!
yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. And that doesn't count the babies and the engagements and all the other stuff. So
yeah, that's so amazing.
Big year.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what 2019 brings you, right?
Yeah. Some really great matches already. So I'm excited to see.
Awesome. Well, so I would love for you to share with the ladies how you found the guardian of your soul and who that is and, what came about.
Wow. Okay. So, well, first of all, I really get what women, how women feel when you're sort of at a later stage of life and you're wanting to find a true partner. And especially if you've had a really bad history of relationships leading up to that, it can feel almost insurmountable, or at least it did for me when I went out and I knew that I was going to have to go out and make this happen in my life. I'm not really sure how far back to go or where to start, but
well, I know parts of your story, and I think it's important to share about your first marriage, because I think a lot of people always view the end result and they think, oh, well, it was easy for Lisa, but Lisa didn't have it easy. So I would love you to share parts of that.
Okay. So I really did marry the first man who paid attention to me and who I really hit it off with. We met in school when I was at Brooks Institute, which was a photography school in Santa Barbara. And, I look back now and I just look at myself and it was like, what were you thinking? But at the time, I was just so happy to connect with somebody and have a man that I felt really loved me and wanted to be with me. But it was a terrible, terrible marriage. And it was, really riddled with money problems and struggles all the way through. And I think a lot of women will understand when I say that, when you're in it, you just don't see it. You can't see clearly. And especially when we're young and we have all of this mythology around marriage that you're supposed to make it work and that's what you're there for. So it's very hard to distinguish what the things are that are deal breakers and when you really should leave, and what are the things that you should try to work through. And I now know that there are 3 things that they say are absolute deal breakers, which are the 3 A's: addiction, abuse, and not always, but often adultery. And so those are the 3 things that can be deal breakers, right? My husband was a pathological liar. And, when there's a lie here and a lie there and a lie there, you just don't see it. Anyway, flashing forward, I got to a point in my marriage where things just weren't working. And my life wasn't working. I was codependent and I stayed in that marriage for so long because I wasn't physically attractive. I was depressed. Had at times gotten up to almost 200 pounds. And I think down deep, I really didn't believe that there would be another man out there for me. We had broken up for a year at one point. We weren't married at the time. We were dating and we broke up. And I met no one in that year. And so I had an entire year's worth of evidence that he really was the only man who would be with me. So I stayed, and it got so bad. And at some point, this is what I would share with some of the listeners. This is really what started to get me out of my marriage. I was holding on to it so tightly because I was terrified to leave him. And I was afraid that he was going to figure out that I couldn't get my life together and that he was going to leave me. Uh-huh. And what got me out of the marriage, one of the main things, was that I started to imagine the worst case scenario. Like, what if he did leave me? What if the relationship ended? What would my life look like? What would I do? What would my next steps be? And I started to think about it. And Suzanne, I started to realize my life wouldn't be so bad.
You were like, oh my God, it's actually could be better.
Yes. I started to see that, I would do this. Well, the first thing I would do is I would move. I would probably move I was living in Italy at the time. I would move to Santa Fe, New Mexico. He was not Italian. We were there because we were both fashion photographers in the 80s, or in the late 80s, early 90s. But I started thinking about it, and it was like, wait a minute, my life wouldn't be so bad. And maybe I shouldn't be a photographer. And maybe I just need to start my life over. And if I started my life over, what would that look like? And little by little, I started to see a life without him. And I started to realize that I needed to leave, and that so many of the issues, I thought I was the problem. And I started to be able to clearly separate what was my stuff and what was his stuff. So that's how I started to envision a way out. And, I share this story, but, as I started to get out of this in my mind, we were sitting there and we were arguing about money. And I'm sure a lot of people will relate to this. I had this moment, just this lucid moment, where I said to myself, oh my God, this is the same argument we've been having for 13 years. And I thought, if I had had a recording and I could have hit play of that conversation about money from 13 years ago, it would have been identical. The same lies, the same bullshit, the going in circles, all of it. When are you going to solve this? What are you going to do? What's your plan? How are we going to get out of this? And I stopped in the middle of the conversation and I said, I can't do this anymore. I said, I got to leave. And I think that, 2 days later, I was on a plane back to the States.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And did he try to stop you, or did he just say, okay, it's over?
I think he realized that I was changing. I think he had seen me starting to change. When I was I had spent some time in the darkroom. I didn't have access to therapy when I was in Italy, so I sort of had to become my own therapist. Mm-hmm. And this is a crazy detail of the story, but I didn't know what to do. And I had this little itty bitty book from Paramahansa Yogananda, and it was called The Laws of Success, something like that. It was a little tiny red book, itty bitty, that big, 24 pages. And on the front of it, it said, the laws of success, and each double fold page, every 2 pages, was a different spiritual principle. Mm. And they were little bit nuggets, just bite size. And I would read these things And then I'd go in the darkroom and I'd be printing, and I would just think about whatever that principle was. And I would think about, what does that mean? How can I apply that to my life? And, people are running around with this coach and this program and that one. You don't need, I'm telling you, 24 freaking pages, right? And some deep introspection. And I thought my way out of my marriage on my own.
So it sounds like you changed a lot, because it wasn't just saying to your husband at the time that this marriage is over, but it sounds like you also changed your career and your personal life by moving from Italy back to the States after how long did you live there?
I lived in Italy for 7 years, and literally I was, it was the heyday of fashion. Like, it was, Italy had this thing called pret-a-porter, which is Italian ready to wear. It used to be couture and all of this, and ready to wear was really just coming out. It was taking off. And the Italians had all this money to invest in fashion photography and magazines and all of that. So we were young photographers trying to get a break, but I had no self-esteem. And so I did get some breaks, but I had such low self-esteem that I just, you can't do something like that if you have no confidence.
Yeah.
So I was spinning my wheels. I was going nowhere. It was the wrong field for me. It was just a nightmare, the whole thing. It was a dark, and then I'd go, if you want to talk about, life as art or, whatever, but literally I would go, I had this dark life, and then I'd go in the dark room and print. I was in the dark,
yeah,
metaphorically and actually.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a dark time in my life. I look back and I don't know, I've had therapists say to me, Lisa, I don't know how you got yourself out of that.
Yeah. So Lisa, because I think a lot of people think, oh, Lisa's so beautiful, she can get any man. And so what you described how you were back then, because I'm assuming that was in your 20s and 30s,
Yeah.
is they're thinking, well, she was gorgeous. She could have got any man. And I would love for you to share with the ladies, were you that woman that all the men was chasing? I know you said you didn't get any dates for a year, but can you share with them? Because I think they see a completely different person today. So
No, literally, first of all, my ex-husband wouldn't recognize me walking down the street today. And I've had no plastic surgery, it's not plastic surgery. It's none of that. It was really an internal transformation. And I never had boyfriends. I never have been a magnet. I'm a straight shooter. I'm not, I wasn't a flirt. I didn't know how to engage men. I went through all of high school without ever going to a prom or having a date. It was insane. And it was so hard for me. Like, this whole thing, it's one of the reasons why I wanted to become a coach when I finally did meet Benjamin. And I was just like, I worked so hard. There was a point when I was in that dark room processing my life, right? And I really got it. I said, Lisa, you have been a victim your whole life. Nobody can do this for you. You are going to have, I had been blaming everybody else and thinking they should all change. And I said, Lisa, you couldn't possibly change all the people that you think need to change. Maybe you're the one who needs to change. Maybe you need to start to look at yourself and why you're so miserable. And one of the things, as I was going through this process, I asked myself, why are you so unhappy? Why are you so sad all the time? And I got the answer that came back was because my mom had died of breast cancer when I was 15. And I had told myself when she was dying, I said, you will always be sad because most little girls don't go through this. And then as I was standing there in the dark room, I said, Lisa, you made that up. Like, that's the belief that you created. And I was like, well, I don't want to be sad anymore. And so then I said, well, make something else up. And I said, okay, I'm going to make up that I'm wiser. Like, I didn't have a therapist or a coach or anybody doing this. I was doing this with myself. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, I'm going to make up that I'm wiser because my mother died. And I was like, okay, I can deal. That's cool. I can deal with that. And then my next thought was, oh my God, I make it all up. And I was like, Lisa, if you make it up, then you really need to make it up. Like, you need to make up a completely different story. And that's to your name of your business, your next story.
Yep.
That was the beginning of my next story. And I said, I'm going to change my life. I'm going to start to rewrite my own story. And I said, it doesn't matter. I make up a bad story. I might as well just make up a good story if I'm making it all up. Why not make up a good one?
Exactly. Well, that's so true. That's so true. And so what I'm hearing from you is that you started to do the shift from the inside out, and then you became the woman that you truly wanted to be. It's not just looking good from the outside, because that's not what's going to hold a man or make you happy, quite honestly, right? It's you did the work on the inside.
Yeah. And Suzanne, I wasn't physically attractive. I look at pictures of myself. I mean, I was really, truly not attractive. I mean, not at all. I have gotten really, in the 16 years that I've been with Benjamin, I think that being in love, feeling loved and being in love is the most beautiful elixir, that is really soul food, right? And that has helped. I think I feel loved and happy and appreciated and seen every day of my life for the last 16 years. So, I feel like it's sort of it's a night and day. But just to be, before we move to the next part, I would say, I was 39 when I set out to actually date. I did a lot of work on myself with spiritual teachers. I studied with Don Miguel Ruiz in a very beautiful spiritual group, but I did some deep work on myself. And, before I was really ready to go out and find the guardian of my soul. And my story, I mean, lots of people today will say, oh, I've been on way more dates than that. But, there wasn't YouTube. There wasn't the internet. I mean, there were barely cell phones. Texting didn't exist 18 years ago when I went online, right, for the first time. And I went on 96 first dates, and there were only 2 second dates in all of those dates. And I don't think that anybody, I'm not saying only go on first dates or that you have to go on 1 million first dates. That's how it worked for me. I mean, That was just my story. Plenty of my clients meet guys after just a handful of dates. But I felt like I had never really dated. I wanted to see what was out there. I wanted to know that I was really picking the right man. And I was okay. Like, so what? If it wasn't a hit, it wasn't a hit, And I may have missed some really good guys out of those 96 guys, but so what? Like, I found my Benjamin. That's all I need. I got the only one that I really want to be with. So
can you share with the ladies how you found the guardian of your soul?
Yeah. So, well, like I said, I just, I had an epiphany, believe it or not, because of my weight issues, I would rip off every freaking Band-Aid there was. Like, I don't care. I got to say, for me, I want transformation. Once I realized that this was possible, and I know you're shaking your head, Suzanne, because you get it, but once I realized what was possible and who I could become in my life and what was out there for me, there was nothing. Like, I would do anything. I worked with shamans. I walked on coals. I, did these ropes courses where you feel like you're going to die. I did anything and everything I could do to face my fears and really transform myself and become the person that I am today. But what happened was I spent about 8 years doing all this work, and I was ready to turn 40. And it's not like everybody said, be fabulous and, love will find you. Bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. There I was slimmer and happier and thriving, and no men, like zero. And so I just looked around and I said, Lisa, I was turning 40, and I just said, you better get your butt out there, and you have, and I realized loving myself was only half the journey. The second half of the journey was surrendering my separate self, being willing to let go of my separateness and really merge soul to soul with another human being. And that's the kind of love I wanted. And so I was sitting in a 12-step meeting for food because I wanted to deal with my food issues. So for 4 years, I went to this program where I weighed and measured my food every day. I called my sponsor. I had to go 3 times a week. It was basically food hell. And I'm sitting in this meeting, and we were meditating, I think. And it hit me that I knew that all spiritual paths lead, and for anybody who doesn't know, 12-step is really a spiritual path to a higher power. That's what they're showing you. They're showing you how to replace an addiction with God or a higher power. So I'm sitting in this spiritual 12-step meeting, and we're meditating, and it hits me that all spiritual paths are paths to God or unconditional love, right? I knew that. But what I didn't know was that we can have it in this lifetime. So I had always thought that I had to be some perfect human being, some ascended master, that I had to reincarnate millions of times, and then maybe I would be one of these lucky people who could actually achieve unconditional love. And it hit me that that was absolutely not true. And so I said to myself, I'm going to get out there, and I'm not going to look for the one. I'm not going to look for, a guy or a man or a partner, whatever. I want a guardian of my soul. I want unconditional love. And so that was what I was searching for. And I would go on these dates, and my question was not, does he fit my list? My question I was asking myself was, can I love and accept this man sitting across from me exactly the way he is? Because if I can't do that for him, I can't ask him to do that for me.
Oh my God, that's amazing. I love that you did that. Can you share with the ladies, because I get why you said that, but can you share with the ladies why that's so important to love a man for who he is and not try to change him, not try to mold him into something that you feel that he should be?
Well, for many, many, many reasons. But, I think every single woman watching this can say to herself, I really want a man to love and accept me the way I am. Yeah. And I felt very clear that I had worked so hard to get to be, to become the woman I was. And while I wasn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, I really loved who I was. And that was hard won. And I was not going to let anybody, come in and tell me that I wasn't a beautiful woman inside and out.
Mm-hmm.
And so in order to have the thing we want, everything works in reverse. In order to get what you want in life, you have to first be willing to give it. And
Right.
so most people are looking, to get something first and then they'll give it. It doesn't work that way. You have to be willing to give it first. And I know a lot of women will say, yeah, but I'm such a giver and people take advantage of that. And, guys have walked all over me. You can't, Suzanne and I are not talking about being a doormat. You have got to have boundaries. There has to be respect. There has to be reciprocity. You can't just give and give and give and sit there and not expect to receive in return. I would just sit and I would see what they were willing to give in return. And then I checked in and I said, does this feel right? Is this aligned for me?
Right.
And the guy I met right before Benjamin was a total avoidant, like classic. If anybody has ever read Men Who Can't Love, I mean, this guy, somebody suggested that book to me and I got it and read it. And I wrote the story of Lisa and so on the cover of that book, because it was literally, he love bombed me. He went hot and cold and I figured it out in 6 weeks. It was like 6 weeks. I knew something was seriously wrong. I didn't have the book at that time. There was no YouTube or anything to tell me, but I felt sick in my gut that here I was showing up with such an open and loving heart. And this man was in so much fear and he was critical of me and I knew who I was and I felt like it was a test.
Let me ask you a question, because something just popped into my head when you said that.
Yeah.
Was he like your ex-husband?
No.
He wasn't like your ex-husband? Because I
No.
almost felt like that was her test to see if she'd go back to that same type of man.
No, it was something I had never encountered. My ex-husband wasn't mean or critical like that. This man was like, so the story goes like really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I was at his house. He snapped at me. We were working on I was helping him on a script he was writing. He snapped at me and he said, "You're just like my father. You're so condescending." Now, I knew in my life that I had been a condescending person, and I knew that I was not a condescending person in that, at that time. And so I knew that was his stuff. I got up and I said, I was spending the night. I said, I'm going to go up. I'm going to go to bed. I'll see you upstairs. I got into bed and he came in and turns on the TV and he sits there like this next to me. And I'm laying there thinking, I didn't just go through 8 years of hell to work on myself for this. And I'm like, if this is 6 weeks, I don't want to see 6 months or 6 years. So I waited till he went to sleep. I got my stuff. I went home. The next morning he called me and he didn't say, why did you leave or what, no, he said, I wanted to talk to you before I ended this. And I didn't bring it to his attention. I didn't, and it was really this amazing moment, because the old me would have been like, excuse me, I was the one who left, right? But I didn't need to be right. I didn't need to make a point. And I just said to him, I said, okay, what did you want to tell me? And he started to do a character assassination. You're so condescending and you're this and you're that and you're blah, blah, blah. And I'm just sitting there. And I remembered that Don Miguel had said, you should never have to justify or explain yourself to anybody. People will either get you or they won't. So I just sat there and I listened. And when he was all done, I said, wow, you really don't like me.
Wow.
I had no script, Suzanne. I had no idea what I was going to say. And then he said, well, are you going to do something about this? Trying to hook me right into a fight. And the old me would have just taken the bait and I would have been off and running. Would have been off and running. And I said to him, And I just said, yeah, I'm going to hang up the phone. I said, I don't want to be in a relationship with someone who doesn't like me.
Yeah.
And so he wrote me an email a little while later with more stuff. And then 2 weeks later, he sent me an email and he said, by then I had read that book, but he said, he said, I always feel remorseful afterward. And he said, you are a shining star. You're on your path. He said, just keep doing what you're doing.
Oh my God.
Yep.
He's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
You know, I wrote him back and I said, I want to thank you for your email. And I said, it's not often that we get such blatant confirmation from the universe that we really are on the right path. So I want to thank you for that. And I said, but being in a relationship with you was wretched. And I said, you really need help. And I recommended that book and I deleted all further communication.
Yeah.
But, you know, it was that clarity. And that he was the closest thing, Suzanne, at that time. Like he had the job, he was handsome, he had studied with Don Miguel. He was everything I thought I wanted in a partner.
Can you speak to that? Because I think that a lot of women can get blinded by what looks good on paper. And then what I say is once you take away all what looks good on paper then what do you have left, right? And you start to see the real him or who he was. Can you speak to that and how sometimes women can get blinded by either chemistry, attraction, or what looks good on paper?
Yeah, I think it's so, sure. Like, I have a gym up here. I go to the gym and I see all the celebrities up there in my little corner. Like Armie Hammer was working out there, Dev Patel. I mean, here's these handsome, gorgeous men, and of course my heart skips a beat. Like you look at Dev Patel in the flesh and he's even cuter in person than he is, on the screen. I mean, yeah, but it's, you've got to look beneath that. And Mother Nature, the thing I think people really, that's so humbling, is that we are wired for sex and procreation. And all of that chemistry and that, skyrockets and all of that stuff is Mother Nature doing her job, just driving us to procreate. And, my husband said a few years ago, he said, he said he's really grateful that he's not driven by hormones anymore, because he said it's such a relief not to just be at the mercy of our hormones, because that's really what's driving that. And I play this little game with myself, Suzanne. When I'm out, I'll look at, men. Mm-hmm. I'll look at men and I'll see a guy and, maybe not the cutest guy or the guy that everybody would be hitting on, but I'll look at him and I'll ask myself, could I go on a date with that man? Mm-hmm. And, and I'll think, and then I'll say to myself, you know what? If he's passionate, if he lights up, if he has a job that he just loves, that he's doing good in the world, maybe he's got a wicked sense of humor that's just going to tickle my funny bone and and really warm my soul. Yeah, I would go on a date with him, and I do that from time to time because you and I both know some of I have a friend, Chris, and he will tell you he is not the handsomest guy, the guy that every woman would look at. Chris is the freaking coolest human being on the planet. And many of the women here wouldn't go on a date with him. This man is look at Jeff Bezos. He's got a beautiful, warm smile. Is he the handsomest guy on the planet? No, but look at him. So you've got to get past that stuff.
Yeah. I say it's more about how a man treats you and how he makes you feel. And I know Benjamin makes you feel amazing. and he treats you very, very well.
He
So,
does. And he's handsome, you know, but I was not looking for that.
right.
I wasn't. And he's, you know, he may not be handsome to other people, but he's a very masculine looking man. I mean, the
Mhm.
thing about Benjamin is that he's just, you know, he's a man. He's a super masculine guy. But yeah, I mean, but I could have cared less.
Yeah, well, you did all that inner work to figure out what was important to you and what you would stand for and what healthy boundaries you could draw with men, and you weren't going to settle, right?
Yeah, and I don't care if he's a few inches taller or a few inches shorter, you
Yeah,
know, all of that stuff changes. And, you know, what kills me is that there are women who are missing out on amazing men right now over the most superficial bullshit stuff. Like, you know, Benjamin was a few inches taller than me. He's also 9 years older. So now he's a couple inches shorter. That stuff
yeah,
changes. It doesn't matter. It doesn't
exactly.
matter. I had 16 years while some of you are out there worrying about how many hairs he has on his head and how many inches taller he is. You are wasting precious, like the best years of your life on the most superficial stuff that is going to change anyway.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, Lisa, usually at this point in the interview, I ask about a time in your life when, you felt like it was too late for you, but, you already shared that with
Yeah.
us. And so I would love for you to just share closing thoughts for that woman out there that is listening today that feels like, oh my God, yeah, that's great for Lisa, but I feel like it's too late for me. What would you say to her?
Every single woman I talk to, I have coached in Los Angeles, California, some of the youngest, the most gorgeous women you have ever laid eyes on. And they think that they are flawed and that there is nobody out there for them. My oldest client is 75 years old. She just fell in love with the most amazing, amazing man. He is so cute. They are adorable. She's beautiful. There are people out there. Here's the thing, you're never too old for love. And I know people say that, but especially in this generation, the times, they're changing. Things are different today. What happened in our mothers and our grandmothers' time, this is a whole different era with internet dating, with more women getting divorced or couples getting divorced, and there are more single people in their 50s and 60s and 70s. So my best advice, hire a great coach that you love and let that person shower you with positive energy and solutions and optimism and take you by the hand and show you that you can do this, because you can.
Exactly. That's so true. Well, Lisa, I know you have a free gift for the ladies, so can you tell them what that is?
Yes, I have a webinar and it is called How to Conquer the Dating World in 5 Simple Steps and Attract a Man Who Will Cherish You, Adore You, and Love You Forever, even if you've never been in a healthy relationship. And please watch it. And if you enjoy the webinar, you can jump on a call with me. And I also have a Facebook group, which is free. It's called Dating Without Drama. There's a lot of drama in Dating Without Drama. So if you join and you don't like it, leave. But I actually have people who have been in the group a long time who have told me that they found their partners because there's men and women in the group and they get feedback from both sexes, and a lot of people really love it. So we'll post the link to that too.
Awesome, ladies. So if you'd like Lisa's free gift, the webinar, you can click on the link on this page and go watch her free webinar. And Lisa, thank you so much for being a part of this amazing series. I love you so much. You make me laugh. You are amazing. You inspire and you empower other women.
Oh, well, Suzanne, I feel, having a kindred spirit like you, I just want everybody to know we met through Suzanne's summits, or her series that she's done. But the two of us really genuinely have developed a very real friendship. And she's moving out here, and we are going to hang out, and we're going to, take that friendship to an even deeper level. So thank you. I just cherish
Aw.
you.
Thanks so
Yeah.
much, Lisa.